Welcome to OT Theory Gossip. I'm Abby.
And I'm Allie.
And this is the podcast where we spill the tea on occupational therapy theory.
Today, we're diving into the drama between two major occupational therapy models. First up, the model of human occupation, also known as MOHO, and the Person Environment Occupation Performance Model, or the PEOP.
Our goal today is to break down these two models in a way that's easy to understand while also showing how occupational therapists use them to guide clinical reasoning and intervention.
By the end of this episode, you'll understand what each model focuses on and how they're different. Also, how they help therapists support meaningful participation in everyday occupations.
All right, let's start with MOHO. MOHO was developed by Gary Kilhoffner and is one of the most widely used occupational therapy models.
So MOHO is based on the idea that people don't just randomly do things. Our occupations are influenced by motivation, habits, abilities, and the environment around us.
In other words, MOHO is all about understanding why someone does or doesn't engage in occupations.
Now, the first key component is something called volition, which is basically motivation.
Volition includes a person's interest, values, and their belief in their own abilities.
For example, if someone used to love cooking, but after an injury they feel like they're terrible at it, their motivation to cook might significantly drop.
Basically, MOHO would say that we need to explore those beliefs and interests before expecting them to jump back into the activity.
Next up, habituation. Now this refers to habits and roles.
These are the routines and patterns that structure daily life, like being a student, a parent, or a worker.
When something major happens like illness, injury, or even life transition, those routines can get disrupted.
And suddenly, the person might feel like their entire day has lost structure.
The third component is performance capacity, which refers to the physical and the mental abilities that actually allow someone to perform occupations.
Even if someone is motivated and has routines, they still need the physical and cognitive capacity to complete the activity.
That's right, and finally, last but not least, MOHO looks at the environment.
This includes physical spaces, social supports, cultural influences, and resources.
The environment can either support occupational engagement or it can even create barriers.
In practice, MOHO helps therapists look at the whole picture.
So, for example, if a client with depression stops engaging in self-care routines, a therapist using MOHO might explore the changes in motivation, the disrupted habits, and decreased occupational identity.
Interventions might focus on rebuilding routines, identifying meaningful activities, and even restoring a sense of competence.
So to go back and sum it all up in one sentence, MOHO helps therapists understand how motivation, habits, abilities, and the environment all interact to influence occupational participation.
Now, let's move on to PEOP, which stands for the Person Environment Occupation Performance Model.
This model was developed by Baum and Christensen, and it focuses on how a person, their environment, and the occupations they perform all interact to influence performance.
So basically, the big idea behind PEOP is that occupational performance depends on the fit between the person, their environment, and the task.
Alrighty, so first up we have the person.
This could include physical abilities, cognitive skills, emotional factors, and even personal values and spirituality.
Basically, everything internal to the individual.
Next up is the environment, which includes physical, social, cultural, and institutional factors.
That's right, so think things like home layout, school expectations, family support, or even policies can influence how somebody might perform those occupations.
Then moving on, we have occupation, which is the actual activity someone is trying to perform.
This could be daily activities like dressing or school tasks like completing homework, different work tasks within that, leisure activities, social participation.
Finally, PEOP looks at performance, which is the outcome.
So basically, in other words, can the person successfully complete the occupation within that given environment?
For example, if a child's struggling to complete their homework, PEOP encourages the therapist to analyze several different factors within that.
Okay, so maybe the task is too difficult, the environment is too distracting, or the child needs skills to be developed more before they can participate.
Basically, intervention could include modifying the environment, adapting the task, or even just working on building the child's skills.
So, again, to sum it up, PEOP focuses on how the interaction between person, environment, and occupation determines overall performance.
Now let's compare the two models.
Okay, so MOHO, this tends to focus more on internal factors like motivation, habits, and occupational identity.
And PEOP focuses more on the interaction between the person, environment, and occupation, especially the idea of finding the right fit.
In other words, MOHO often asks, what's going on inside the person that's affecting their participation?
While PEOP asks, is there a mismatch between the person, the environment, and the task?
Now, both models also connect this concept called occupational justice.
Occupational justice focuses on ensuring that people have equal opportunities to participate in the occupations that are meaningful to them.
That's right. So, for example, environmental barriers like, say, inaccessible buildings, lack of transportation, or limited community resources, these can all restrict participation.
And occupational therapists work to identify and reduce these barriers so that people can engage fully in their daily lives and routines.
That's right. And understanding models like MOHO and PEOP, well, this helps therapists to make informed and clinical decisions.
Instead of just focusing on a task that someone struggles with or can't do, the therapist can analyze the underlying factors that are influencing their performance in that task.
These models also help keep therapy client-centered, so meaning that interventions are based on what is meaningful and important to the individual.
As future occupational therapists, learning these models will help us understand how complex occupational performance really is.
It reminds us that participation in daily activities is not just about physical ability.
Motivation, habits, environment, social factors, they all play a role.
And using models like MOHO and PEOP allows therapists to look at the full picture and support people in engaging in meaningful occupations.
Thanks for listening to OT
Theory Gossip. Hopefully now the drama between MOHO and PEOP makes more sense.
And remember, occupational therapy is always about helping people participate in the activities that matter most to them.